Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, in my book, one of the great heroes post-January 6 has been Congressman Barry Loudermilk, Republican of Georgia. He has started a new January 6 committee and looking into all the ins and outs and what really happened there. Barry Loudermilk, Republican of Georgia again, is stepping down from Congress. He is leaving, and he's made his pick for that seat very, very clear. He wants his chief of staff, Rob Atkerson, to be the next member of Congress from that district in Georgia. And he joins us right now. Rob Atkerson, welcome. How are you? Tomorrow's the primary?
It is, Greg. Thanks for having me. Yeah, tomorrow's the primary. We're in what I'm calling the Tom Petty phase. You know, the waiting is the hardest part. So
wow.
we're leaving it all on the field here today and tomorrow, and everybody said their piece, and tomorrow the only poll that matters. We'll have that in by tomorrow night.
Is it tough to get people out there on a it's May? A lot of us don't associate primaries with May. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a tough time in Georgia. You know, some people are on vacation, but we've had a decent early vote turnout. Republicans are lagging a little bit behind Democrats in the early vote, but that's typical. A lot of Republicans, and particularly in Georgia, you know, with our history, prefer to go and vote on Election Day and make sure that they're doing it, you know, same day, so they feel a little more confident about it. So we feel good. We feel good. We've run this race, and you mentioned that Barry Loudermilk is endorsing me, and folks have said, you know, well, you're his chief of staff. Are you just a DC guy? Are you an insider? And you know, the folks in the district know that I am. I've been in this fight for a long time. That's the reason Barry asked me to be his chief of staff, was because I was one of the original Tea Party founders in Georgia. I've been fighting on the grassroots level for a long time, long before I served as his chief of staff. So Barry and I have both managed to not let Washington D.C. get into our bloodstream over the last 11 years. And I've been right there with him on this entire J6 investigation. As a matter of fact, that was one of my biggest regrets, for lack of a better word. You know, I had to resign from the office to run for this seat. So, I was kind of at the tip of the spear on this J6 investigation. So I hated to leave that because it's really still in the thick of it. Barry's going to put out, probably September, October range, probably put out his final report is what he's been able to dig into. But they're still working it hard up there, and I haven't been able to be a part of it for the last couple of months.
Yeah, you got to leave that job to run for the office, but you really were key and covering a lot of stuff. A lot of momentum right now in the January 6th, truth coming to light. Here's Michael Fanone, the fake redneck Capitol cop. Cut 2, if you don't mind. Cut 2.
I know that Jimmy helped to evacuate me from the building and drove me to MedStar Washington Hospital Center, despite suffering significant injuries himself. At the hospital, doctors told me that I had suffered a heart attack, and I was later diagnosed with a concussion, a traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
All right, let me just jump in real quick. Now, I noticed years ago that that wasn't adding up, because he was totally fine like 7 days later. I mean, totally fine, and doing interviews and photo ops. And then we saw his body cam footage, showed that he was fine that day. But there's a lot of momentum right now about him, and I'm trying to figure out why is it that this body cam footage that I've seen and you've seen, and I saw it a fairly long time ago, is just coming to a head right now.
Well, it's a matter of the right platform releasing it to the general public. I've been hoping that's something like that would come out. There's some other things that would come out to change this narrative. But one of the biggest takeaway, Greg, that it being part of this investigation, is that all of the star players post January 6th were completely lying about everything, whether it's Fanone or Harry Dunn the Capitol Police officer who's now running for Congress again. That was his promise, and people have gotten sweetheart jobs after this. And of course, Cassidy Hutchinson, our committee has deconstructed literally everything she said on primetime TV was a lie. And so everything was a lie. And so, but it's, because there was this kind of air afterwards, because, January 6th, when you watch that from afar around the country, it was a shock to your senses. Because this is the United States of America, and this looks like this thing that's happening. But when you start to dig into it, and you realize that, and I don't want to get ahead of the investigation or the report or anything, but it just things aren't what they seem. And so, it's been frustrating that only folks like you and some of the alternative media have been pushing this and continuing to keep it out there, and that's a good thing because America deserves the truth. Just like they deserve the truth on the Russiagate hoax and all the other stuff that they've tried to do against President Trump over the years. It's all fake. It's all the Washington machine or swamp, if you will, trying to keep the America First movement out, trying to maintain their power. And it's just all fake. And so I think, to see that body cam, and you said, 7 days later he was fine. 7 minutes later he was fine. And I've seen that video, and so, and look, don't get me wrong. Some of our folks ended up doing the wrong thing. They were, whether they were provoked or they were there to do the wrong thing. There were a handful that kind of helped the opposition, if you will, by bad behavior. But by and large, this thing was cooked up. The aftermath was definitely cooked up. We released, I believe it was released in one of the interim reports, that at one point after the January 6th, the Pelosi was in a meeting with the Secret Service, and she said, "I want the 6-foot black fence all around the Capitol." And they said, "Ma'am, we don't think there's any further threat." And she said, "I don't care. I want the world to see what Donald Trump did to their city." And so, that was the thing. Beforehand, she didn't want the National Guard because she said optics. But afterwards, she wanted all the optics she could possibly get. And so all those optics, I think, of what's paralyzed a lot of the media and the politicians because, they don't want to be associated with this thing. But as the truth comes out, more and more people become comfortable acknowledging the facts that we have been uncovering, Barry Loudermilk and his team and I, for the last 3.5 years.
So a couple of weird things I found out, and then we'll move on. But Fanone's book, I just decided to open it up again. I haven't looked at it in a long time. So he is, had a heart attack, had all these things happen, which is not true. He's getting an MRI, and this is what he does. "I spent the next few hours enduring tests, including an ear-splitting MRI and a seemingly endless CT scan. Back at the ER, while waiting on my test results, a nurse asked me how I was doing. 'I don't know,' I replied. 'How am I doing?' 'Everything's great,' she lied. 'You're doing fine.' 'No,' I said, pointing to my crotch. 'How am I doing?' She laughed. 'I'm sure that's going to be fine, too.'" I mean, this guy's an animal. This guy, it's the strangest, bizarre. Yeah. He's a freaking nut.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at the interaction that he had recently with, I guess it was Ivan Raiklin in one of the committee meetings. I mean, he was clearly unhinged. Somebody said something to him, and he wanted to fight, and that's kind of his impulse reaction is to try to go violent every time somebody challenges his narrative. And that tells me a lot about the substance of what he's saying.
So you know what it's like to go back and forth between Washington, D.C. and the district. That's a pretty grueling life, I hear. I mean, being a member of Congress is a lot of, I mean, how do you, that's a tough life. Tougher than people think. Tougher than people think.
Well, and I've done it as a chief of staff, and Barry and I both have maintained residence in the district. I live in the district. He's always lived in the district, and we get out of there. I stay as a chief of staff, I stayed in a hotel. As a member, I will probably do what Barry and many other members do, which is sleep in my office, because I don't have any interest in having a residence in Washington, D.C. It's not where I live. It's not reality. As a matter of fact, as chief of staff and along with Congressman Loudermilk, all of our staff one of the things that we strongly encourage, not necessarily required, but strongly encourage all of our staff, wherever they're from, at least 2 or 3 weeks a year, go back home, see how real people live, because this city's not it. So we wanted to make sure that our staff stay connected to the real world. And that's what we've tried to do throughout. And we managed, both of us have never let Washington get in our blood. I love the historic nature of the city. I love all the history there. I probably have, and I'm not kidding, I probably have 4,000 or 5,000 pictures of the Capitol and the mall in different light settings and different sunsets and sunrises and all this stuff. And everybody said, well, how many pictures do you need? I said, look, it's, I love everything our country stands for. I love what that Capitol stands for. The people and the activity in that city is a whole different animal. It doesn't represent what our founders created. I've been telling folks on the campaign trail, I've got this image, and I've had the idea in my head for a long time, but I finally, using ChatGPT, I got it to create an image for me. And, I view the federal government that our founders created under Article 1, Section 8, very limited powers. If our federal government was a steam engine, it would be this beautiful, sleek freight liner, efficient, rolling down the tracks. And then today in 2026, because we've abandoned Article 1, Section 8, and we're doing everything under the sun, this thing looks like something out of Mad Max. It's weighted down with all this trash all over it that the federal government should not even be participating in. And we've got to return it to that vision of the founders. And that's kind of what, my motivation is to get the federal government out of everybody's lives and return it to that Article 1, Section 8 limitation.
Well, sir, we wish you, that's quite an analogy. It's very powerful. I totally get it. This is Georgia 11th, correct? Georgia 11th District?
That's Georgia 11. Voting is tomorrow. My website is voterobatkerson.com. If you want to learn more, I've got, my positions on the issues. All are there, and the voting is tomorrow, and I would appreciate anybody in this district, if your vote, and if you're outside this district, your prayers cross all boundaries. So I would appreciate it.
Well, you can count on that. Rob Atkerson, Adkerson, Atkerson. And, sir, we wish you all the luck in the world tomorrow. We need you down there.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you.
All right, to be continued.
Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Very Hawks baseball.
Tuesday, May 19th at 10:30 a.m., it's morning baseball. Wednesday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m., have a pawsome time at Bark in the Park. Thursday, May 21st at 6:30, it's Pride Night with $5 Bud or Bud Light draft beer. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit VeryHawks.com now to lock in your seats.